342 West 11419er, estimating the Ugain 15.
On channel update 1, map zone 32.
There's not really an average day, but there is kind of a formula for how you do a day.
I'm listening to the scanners, which have all of the police and fire and paramedics coming over the radio waves. And if it sounds serious, then we go down to the basement, grab the Jeep and head out there.
You want to see the neighborhood, you want to talk to the people who live there, you want to talk to the cops who are actually investigating.
That's the only way you're going to really get a sense of where this happened, and you can talk to witnesses who saw what actually happened. If you stay in the office, you're going to have to wait for the official report from the police, and you're going to get a fraction of the story. And you'll get it 2, 3, maybe half a day later.
You want to be as direct as possible, and that means going out to the scene. That is the most important thing a crime reporter can do, is realize that the majority of major crime stories cannot be covered from the newsroom.
Any witness, it depends where they're standing to see what they saw and how they interpreted the events.
You talk to anybody that moves, you get all the details you possibly can.
You want to get all details, smell, sight, sounds.
Who, what, where, when, and why. If you're really lucky, how, but that doesn't come till later.
And I think you also want to capture kind of what the emotion was in the scene as well. Because you're telling the story at that point, you're telling the story of something that happened maybe on a city street. And so you're telling the city story and you're trying to fill in the details for people who weren't there and are concerned about what's going on in their city.
When you come back to the office, we listen to the police scanners constantly. It's your constant companion, you're never without it. 8 hours at a time, if you have to take it home, you have to take it home. And as soon as you hear a crime coming across that police scanner, again, you have to go to that scene immediately.
Often that's the first way that we hear about a homicide. It gets called in as a gun complaint or shots fired or a shooting, stabbing, and then we listen to see how serious it is.
The scanner is your absolute best tool as a crime reporter. I'm not going to say it's more important than the pen and paper, but it kind of is. It's your lifeblood to the rest of the entire city. You can't cover an entire city without a scanner on your hip.
Usually it takes a new reporter about 2 weeks to get up to speed so that they can listen to the scanners kind of about a half an year without even paying much attention while they're doing their calls and they're listening to the radio and they're checking their emails and typing a story. It's kind of like a constant background noise.
When you first get the scanner, you're petrified of it because it comes across in codes like 10-4 and 8-6, and it seems like another language, and there's actually 3 of them, one for police, one for ambulance, one for fire. And they're all speaking seemingly different languages than you, and it's very hard to understand and sort out what's going on. But the longer you listen to the scanner, the more things pop out at you, tone of voice, certain phrases, certain code words, certain numbers.
Normally you can tell even just from their voice if it sounds serious to them. If they are serious about it, then often you can tell that. Normally when we're listening to the scanners, we're not actually listening to every word that they say. We're listening for the tone of voice and for a few key phrases. And if we hear the word stabbing, we'll pay attention more.
And once you master exactly what all of those mean and which ones are important and which ones can be forgotten, then the scanner is absolutely the best tool you have. It becomes your best friend.
If it is a homicide, once the autopsy is done, then the police will likely release a name. And then, of course, with name, we can try to find family and discover the story behind that name. Who is this person and why were they on the streets at that time? And are they involved in a gang or something else that might have led to this? Or was it family related? Or was this totally an innocent bystander that got struck? Because I think all those are very important details for the story that people want to know about. And in some ways it's only right to go to the family because you want to give them a chance to speak about the person who's been lost. And they're the people who know him best, or her best.
It's hard to cover it day to day. It's exciting to cover it, which is nice. It keeps you busy. You get out there and you talk to a lot of different Edmontonians, which is nice. But at the same time, it is bad news all the time. You are talking to people, usually at sometimes the worst point in their lives. They've just lost a family member, just lost a friend, and that's difficult.
I think for any crime reporter, you work for a couple months and then there comes a time where it just gets really difficult because you are dealing with a lot of negative stuff and a lot of grieving people all the time.
crime reporting is by necessity rarely good news, and some people don't want to see that on their front page. Other people they do.
Anytime a homicide happens, it's not our favorite story to cover, but because it is important, we believe in what we're doing. Yeah, it's just good to be, you know that every time you talk to somebody and you really hear them and you really connect with them, it causes you pain. But if you know that you can heal from that, then you can still go on and still do it because you believe in it.
But it is important to get this news out there, and that's what you have to keep telling yourself.
I mean, it's just important to gauge your own emotions and to make sure that you're healthy and you aren't taking your work home, that you're taking a break and being balanced.
If it ever gets to be a bit too much, then you take a little break from it and come back to it when you're ready.
I think it's important to cover crime because it has a major impact on people's lives. And it's one, I mean, it's not the only news for sure. It needs to be in its place, but something traumatic and wrong has happened. And I think that we need to pay attention to that in case there's some way that we can prevent it from happening again. And what the newspaper does is it tells people's stories. We just try to hear people and really tell their stories.